Week 18 of the NFL season is officially here, so in today's video, let's go ahead and do my predictions for every single game of Week 18. But if you guys do go on to enjoy the video, hit the like and subscribe button. We are 1,000 subscribers away from 10,000, so go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you're not subscribed, let's hop into it. And we are going to begin with our Saturday games, beginning with the Cleveland Browns versus the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I do believe that Lamar Jackson will be playing in this game, and that's going to be a bit of a theme for this video. Obviously, it's Week 18, so a lot of teams aren't going to be playing their starters. This is one of those teams that I do believe is playing their starters, so take that as you will. Cleveland, just simply put, is not a really good team. They're clearly tanking for a top-tier pick. They're starting Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who's just not a very good quarterback. Whereas, of course, if you have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry fully going, obviously the Ravens should and probably will win the game. The only thing that is a bit concerning about this game for the Baltimore Ravens is what happens if potentially they do decide to take out Derrick Henry or Lamar Jackson at halftime. I don't think they'll do so. I do believe that they will be playing their starters the majority of the game. But, of course, the Browns did beat this team a couple weeks ago, so you do have to take that into account. With that all said, I just think that these are two teams and clearly going in different directions. The Browns are trying to lose, whereas the Ravens are trying to win. So with that said, I am going to pick the Baltimore Ravens to clear the Cleveland Browns with a final score of 27-12. Then we have another AFC North game, this time between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers have not been playing very good football as of late. They haven't just not looked the same that they did a few weeks ago, especially on the offensive end. The defense has been okay, but definitely not great. Whereas for the Bengals, they've kind of stayed the course in terms of trying to make this comeback to make the playoffs. Obviously, they're going to have to win this game if they want any sort of chance to even make the playoffs. They're also going to need a team like Miami and Denver to also lose. So obviously, a lot of things are going against the Bengals to potentially make the playoffs, but I actually do think the Bengals are, as of right now, playing a better brand of football than the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, obviously, the Bengals have some defensive issues. Those things aren't just going to magically go away. I do think Pittsburgh will get some points, will be able to run the football, and I do think Russell Wilson will have a good game. But when it comes down to it, I just believe that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are going to cause a lot of havoc. That Bengals offense has been incredible all year long. It's just kind of a shame that it really did not amount to anything special. But I think you guys are kind of going to see where I'm going with this. I do think Pittsburgh's a good team, but they're just not playing a very good brand of football right now. So I'm going to pick the Cincinnati Bengals to upset the Pittsburgh Steelers with a final score of 34-24. Then we have the Atlanta Falcons with Michael Penix Jr. as a starter going up against Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers. Now, say what you will about the Carolina Panthers, they're clearly not a very good team. However, with Bryce Young playing a lot better lately, they've become a lot more of a competitive unit. Now, I do believe that the Atlanta Falcons still have a chance to actually win the division, so I do expect the Atlanta Falcons to be going out there and actually trying to win this game. Of course, Carolina isn't going to make the playoffs, so at this point, they're probably just honestly trying to lose so they can get like a top 5 or top 10 pick, but at the same time, it's a prideful unit with a young head coach. They're obviously going to go for this one, so I do expect a back and forth competitive game. Obviously, Week 18, you just never know what type of games you're going to get. I do expect this one to be fun and competitive, but ultimately when it comes down to it, the Falcons are playing a lot better on both offense and defense as of late. Michael Penix Jr. has come in there and played pretty dang well, so I do expect him to put up a good fight against a not so good Panthers defense. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I expect a competitive back and forth game, but when it comes down to it, I gotta have more faith in that Falcons offense, so I am gonna pick the Falcons to win 24-21. Then we have the Houston Texans versus the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans may very well be the worst team in the NFL, but at the same time, I expect this game to not necessarily be a blowout because the Houston Texans, offensively speaking, have just not been a very good team lately. In a lot of ways, these two teams have similar characteristics. I think both these teams have good defenses that are just a little bit inconsistent, whereas the offensive end has some good flashes here and there, but also hasn't been good. Clearly, the Titans are a bit more of an extreme version of the Texans because the Texans are a better team than Houston or than Tennessee, but you can kind of see the resemblance. With that all said, there is one team that is clearly, in my opinion, better coached and way more talented, and that is, of course, the Houston Texans. With CJ Stroud leading the way, I do think they'll be able to find a little bit of a flow for this game offensively wise. I don't expect this one to be necessarily a back and forth game like I do with Atlanta versus Carolina, but I do expect a game that is, somewhat close and competitive. But who do I think is going to win? Well, I do expect Houston to find a way to win. Obviously, CJ Stroud's a way better quarterback than either Will Levis or Mason Rudolph, so I have the final score 22 Houston, 17 Tennessee. Then we have the New York Giants versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, this game is also pretty interesting because I don't think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be playing most of their starters, especially not Saquon and Jalen Hurts. But with that said, I think we saw a lot of things, some really positive things from Kenny Pickett and Tanner McKee, who potentially could get some playing time in this one as well. Even though I do expect the Giants to put forth a good effort like they did last week, I still think the Philadelphia Eagles are just clearly a better team. So this one's honestly kind of hard to predict because I don't know which starters are going to actually play for Philadelphia, and is it going to be all of the bench unit actually playing in this game, or is it actually going to be a mixture of some starters and some bench players? So I'm going to work under the assumption that this game is going to be strictly the second team Philadelphia Eagles team. I expect no starters to play, so if that is the case, the New York Giants have a clear talent advantage in this one, so I am going to pick the New York Giants to win this one if the Eagles are playing their second string guys. I have the final score for that one, 21-14. However, I do want to throw the caveat that if Philadelphia does play some starters, then I kind of think it might lean and tend to be a better performance for Philadelphia, but again, I expect the second string guys. Then we have the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Indianapolis Colts. This game is honestly kind of a meaningless game. Both these two teams have really nothing to play for at this point other than just pride and draft positioning. However, of course, these guys are going to go out there and give it their best effort. Now, I don't know if it's going to be Anthony Richardson or Joe Flacco. To be honest with you, I don't think it really changes my perspective of this game all that much. The only thing that might change is Joe Flacco is going to pass more and Anthony's going to run more. Jacksonville is just not a very good team, though Mac Jones lately has been, a competent quarterback. He's been better than what he was earlier in the year. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're a good team. That also doesn't necessarily mean that Mac Jones is a good quarterback by any means, because let's be honest, we know that the Jacksonville Jaguars aren't a good team, and well, we all know that Mac Jones isn't a good quarterback, but he has been better as of late, of course. With that all said, I do think Indianapolis will be able to run the football again with or without Anthony Richardson. Jonathan Taylor has been really well, honestly, these past few weeks. It just kind of is a shame that it did not amount to really much of anything in terms of playoff success. I expect Indianapolis to go out there and try to win. I expect Jacksonville to kind of do the opposite, so I'm going to go ahead and pick the Indianapolis Colts to win. Kind of a boring, kind of sluggish game, 20-13. Next up, we have the Dallas Cowboys versus the Washington Commanders. Now, again, I do expect Jaden Daniels and the Commanders to play most of their starters, and I think this team is honestly going to try to get revenge for what happened earlier in the season. Obviously, in case you guys forgot, the Commanders lost to the Dallas Cowboys in a game where the Commanders were heavily favored, and it also was a game that had a bunch of late shenanigans, like an onside kick return for a touchdown, a late score by Terry McLaurin. It was kind of just a weird, bizarre game that ultimately resulted in the Dallas Cowboys winning. Dallas got kind of embarrassed last week by Philadelphia, but with that said, they are a better team as of lately than they were kind of earlier in the season, even though Dak Prescott's not the quarterback. I think a lot of it is because of how successful they have been running the football. It feels like the offensive line has figured things out, and the defense has finally gotten at least somewhat healthy. All that said, though, I expect Washington to just be a different team on a different mission. Dallas at this point is proudly checked out in a lot of ways, whereas Washington still has the playoffs to look forward to. This is also a good game to, get revenge. Dallas has kind of owned Washington the past few seasons, so I expect Washington to go into this one motivated and ready to go. I do have the Washington Commanders finally beating the Dallas Cowboys with a final score of 31-20. Then moving on, we have the Green Bay Packers versus the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears are just a complete mess on both sides of the football. Defensively, they've taken a massive step back since the firing of Matt Eberflus, and offensively speaking, it's continued to be bad, but somehow it's gotten even somehow worse. Caleb Williams has been inconsistent, though he has shown plenty of flashes. I definitely do expect that to be a continuous trend into this game. I expect some good throws, but I also do expect that the offensive line is going to cause a lot of issues for Caleb Williams. It's going to be interesting to see what they do in terms of a coaching hire next year for Caleb Williams. I think they need to find a guy who has an offensive mindset, who's going to build an offensive line and put together a scheme that's really going to help out Caleb Williams. But we'll look, obviously, towards the offseason for that idea. But in this game, Green Bay is a better team. Green Bay did lose last week to the Minnesota Vikings, but it was a somewhat competitive game, especially late into the game when it got a little bit tighter. I expect Green Bay to go out here, try to make a statement, get the offense ready and going. I don't know exactly how much the starters will play, but I do expect them to play at least a little bit. I have the Green Bay Packers winning 30-14. Then we have the New Orleans Saints versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I believe that Spencer Rattler is going to be the quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, whereas Baker Mayfield will most certainly be starting in this game. Baker Mayfield did come out with a quote saying that he was going to try to get Mike Evans that 1,000-yard receiving season, and if he does so, he said that the team is likely going to win, and truth be told, I don't necessarily disagree with him. I do expect this team to go out there and try to get Mike Evans that 1,000-yard season. I do expect Baker Mayfield to play at a high level. The Saints just aren't a very good team right now, though they are a scrappy unit that occasionally can kind of come out of nowhere and play well, so I'm not necessarily expecting a blowout by any means, but I'm also expecting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to go in here and take care of their business. I also do believe that if the Buccaneers don't win the game and Atlanta does win their game, I'm not exactly 100% sure of this, but I actually do believe that the Buccaneers will be eliminated, so there is some high pressure in the situation, but if you win the game, you don't have to worry about that. So because of all the pressure that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to have in this game, both Baker Mayfield to get 1,000 yards to Mike Evans, as well as just to win the game in general, I expect them to come into this one laser focused and ready to go, whereas the New Orleans Saints might be a little bit checked out and just ready for the offseason. They have a busy offseason ahead for them, so I do expect Tampa Bay to win this one. I have the final score 32-21. Next up, we have the Buffalo Bills versus the New England Patriots. Now, I just did a little research on this one. I don't know if it's 100% confirmed, but based off what I've heard, the Bills will play their starters for at least a portion of the game and then eventually take their starters out. If I had to guess, maybe a quarter, at most a half. With that all said, I just think the Patriots are a scrappy unit that could win the game, but Buffalo's clearly more talented. I think that first half, maybe they can get a little bit of a lead and just kind of hang on to that lead late. Obviously, Mitchell Trubisky will step in, and he has some experience. It's not like he's going to get out there and get outplayed by Drake May by that much. Drake May has played well, but also has had some turnover issues, so I expect that to be a continuous trend in this one. I do think Buffalo builds an early lead with Josh Allen and then hands the reins off to Mitchell Trubisky, where he just needs to hand the ball off 13, 14 times, and they'll hold on to win the game. So I'm going to pick the Buffalo Bills to win 27-17. Then you have the LA Chargers versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, kind of similar to the Bills, I am not 100% sure about this, but from what I've heard, it does sound like the Chargers will be playing their guys the majority of the game. I heard a quote from Jim Harbaugh saying that they're going to go out swinging, so I expect that to be the case. So I'm going to work under my prediction under those principles. If Herbert plays at a high level, I expect the offense to really get going. The offense has been clicking really well lately. The offense is kind of peaking at the right time, which is really good because they're about to make the playoffs. Whereas for the Raiders, they've actually been, somewhat competitive as of late, but just, obviously they're the Raiders, so they got a lot of issues. The Chargers offensively, as I mentioned, are playing really well, but their defense is also playing at a high level. They've been doing so basically the entire season. Obviously some highs and some lows, but they have been playing really well this year. This is a Chargers team that is obviously trying to amp up towards the playoffs, and I think they'll do so in kind of a sluggy game where they're just trying to figure things out, but they'll get it going eventually, and they will win this one 20-12. Then we move over to the San Francisco 49ers versus the Arizona Cardinals. Now, Brock Purdy will not be playing in this game, so in his shoes, I'm assuming that Joshua Dobbs will be the starting quarterback. Joshua actually looked really good in the short amount of time that we saw him last week. Obviously, the game was already a blowout, so the Lions were basically playing prevent coverage the entire time, but he did go out there and make a couple nice throws and got some touchdowns and got some points, so I expect that to kind of carry over into this game. He is a competent starter who, can make some plays, and that's what I expect him to do in this one. But obviously, Kyler Murray, Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr., those guys have a lot of things going for them heading into the offseason. By the way, I will be having a Cardinals mock off-season video here in a couple of days, so keep your eyes peeled on that one. But Kyler Murray is going to play well in this one. The Niners defense played better in the first half against the Lions, but then they kind of fell apart. I kind of expect a similar sort of thing here where maybe the Niners take an early 9-0 lead or 13-0 lead, and Kyler Murray has to come back and win the game. I kind of expect that. I expect a close game, but ultimately, when it comes down to it, I'm going to take the more healthy and, in my opinion, the better team as of today, the Arizona Cardinals, to win 28-27. Next up, let's talk about the game that so many fan bases will be watching, and of course, I'll have my eyes on this one too, the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Denver Broncos. Now, it's not 100% confirmed, but I do expect the Chiefs to be resting most of their guys. So in Patrick Mahomes' place, I expect Carson Wentz, who has been a starter and has been a pretty solid backup quarterback for the most of his career. For Denver, obviously, you're coming off a very disappointing loss versus Cincinnati. You have a lot of pressure in this game. Sean Payton is a seasoned head coach who's been through a lot of these moments throughout his career, so I expect him to go out there and be very prepared and very meticulous in practices so that this team comes out and they don't come out flat. They come out playing at a high level. With Kansas City playing their backups, I think Denver will be playing most of their starters, and Denver's going to be going for this one pretty heavily, so this one does does lean heavily in favor of the Denver Broncos. Sorry, Bengals fans. Sorry, Dolphins fans. I don't know if Dolphins fans even want to make the playoffs, but I have the Broncos winning 24-18. Next up, we have Geno Smith and the Seattle Seahawks going up against the LA Rams. Now, I have really no clue if the Rams are going to be playing their starters. I also don't know if the Seattle Seahawks will be playing all their starters either. There's kind of been some different people saying different things, so I don't really know who's going to be playing. However, when it all comes together, it does sound like the LA Rams will be starting and benching some guys at some point. So I don't know. I'm a little bit blind on this one, but the Rams aren't playing the best football as of lately. They just haven't looked incredible, although they've been winning games. It hasn't necessarily been in the fashion that you would want to see. Whereas, yes, the Seahawks have been losing some games, but they still got a quarterback that can sling the rock. They still have a defense that's playing pretty well. And, I think it'd be nice for the Seattle Seahawks to get this win here. So I expect the Seahawks to come into this one ready to go, motivated. Even though they're not going to make the playoffs, I expect them to come out here and actually try to win. Whereas for the LA Rams, obviously you want to win, but I don't think that you're going to miss the playoffs if you lose. So there is some pressure off your shoulders, but I actually have the Seahawks winning this one. I just think they're going to come out there, play better football. And obviously the LA Rams are a scrappy team, so they're going to be fine come playoff time. But in this one, I got the Seahawks winning 24-20. Next up, the Miami Dolphins versus the New York Jets. Now, Aaron Rodgers will be playing. I am not sure at all if Tua Tagovailoa will be playing. So this prediction, I'll give you guys two predictions. One if Tua does play, which I don't think he will, but I'll still give you a prediction. And then one if he doesn't play. I'll let you know right now. It's going to be different teams winning depending on what happens with Tua. If Tua plays, I think the Miami Dolphins offense will get going. I think that Tua's been playing pretty well when healthy this year, and the defense has played well as well. So I expect Aaron Rodgers to really struggle in this one. So if Tua does play, which again, I don't think he will, I have the Miami Dolphins winning 21-16. However, if he doesn't win, or if he doesn't go, then I have the New York Jets winning 21-14. And then lastly, the most important game of the week, the game that will decide the number 1 seed in the NFC, as well as the number 5 seed in the NFC, Minnesota Vikings versus the Detroit Lions. Both these two teams have been some of my top 5 teams the entire season. The Lions for many weeks were my number 1 seed, whereas the Minnesota Vikings have pretty consistently been within my top 6, top 7, and most recently within my top 5. Minnesota with Sam Darnold, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Aaron Jones has just been a potent offense that has caused a bunch of issues for other teams. Whereas for the Detroit Lions, you're talking about maybe the best offense in the NFL. The issue for me with the Detroit Lions is they're so banged up defensively that the defense has kind of fallen off a cliff. Is it the worst defense in the league? Maybe not worst, but it's gone from being a top 10 unit to probably outside the top 10 and arguably not even a top 20 defense in the NFL. Now, this Lions team is so well coached offensively, and Aaron Glenn's a good defensive coordinator, so he'll find ways to get stops and create turnovers. So this Lions team can definitely still win a championship and can most definitely still win this game. However, I'm just concerned about this Lions defense, man. It's just a defense that I think is going to cause a lot of issues for them come playoff time, and sure, the offense can overcome them, but I don't know, it's going to be quite difficult, especially when you're going up against the Vikings team that has the offense that can go toe-to-toe with the Detroit Lions, while also having a defense that is healthy and playing at a better level than Detroit's. It's a shame because Detroit, in my opinion, has been the better team for most of the year than the Minnesota Vikings, but Minnesota has just been so consistent and just has found ways to win games. And here we are where both teams have 14 wins, and somehow, some way, one of those teams is going to not get a first round bye. And I have a bad feeling that it's going to be the Detroit Lions. If you want to talk about the team that actually needs the bye week more, it's the Detroit Lions. Whereas, truth be told, for Minnesota, I actually don't really think that they should want the bye week. I actually think this team is rolling at such a high level and just playing so consistent that a pause in their season could potentially give them some rust and maybe cause them to come out in their divisional round game potentially a little bit sluggish. Whereas for Detroit, this is a team that hasn't had a bye week since, I want to say, like week 5. They're super banged up and could really use the extra week to refuel, retool, and get things together. So the Lions, in my opinion, have a ton of pressure to win this game, but I just look at this game and I just think the Minnesota Vikings have all the advantages to win this game. They're healthier. I think they have the offense that can go toe-to-toe. So I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings to, I don't necessarily want to say upset, but to defeat the Detroit Lions 34-30. Now, real quick, here is a recap of everything that I talked about in this video. If you guys agree or disagree with my picks, you can always let me know in the comment section below. Go ahead and check out my current record, 170 to 87. We'll see after this week what my final record is. I think it's going to be pretty good. But if you enjoyed, hit the like and subscribe button. Again, road to 10,000. So subscribe if you're not, and I love you guys. Peace.